As requested, these are the hidden occult messages of 2024. Hello, welcome to the Venus Blueprint. Everything in this video is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. Now, I have been on a journey in diving into the occult for over a decade, and it has led me into great epiphanies all the way into deep self-crises. That is why the intentions of this video is to be very abstract. It's to not choose a side and to stay almost in the gray, to stay in the curiosity and the wonderment of the powers that be and what's hidden behind the consistent messages that we are seeing. Some of you might see this as complete delusion. Some of you might draw conclusions off of this. Ultimately, this is just a chance to connect the dots and to entertain the concept that everything is connected. Now, as a channel that I call this channel the Venus Blueprint, and this channel has gone through many a metamorphosis of names, but Venus does play a very important role in this as well. If you have been around and, there's only just a few people who've really followed my work, you may have remembered that I did a series on Venus isn't as feminine as you think. And to my surprise, as much as I've tried to escape the occult world, because I have had my own moments of epiphany down to personal crises, feeling like everything is going to fall apart, I try to focus on Venus's beauty and fashion and to make this channel mainly about those things. But there's always going to come a time where my own South Node in Scorpio next to Saturn is going to pull a little bit deeper. And Venus is one of the main goddesses and focal points of the occult world. It's not the main one, but it's one of the main ones. And so Venus plays a huge part in the occult world and secret groups and what people follow. But like I said, other planets also play a major role from my findings. This could be Saturn and Uranus. These are also Mercury. So the planets and the astrology, they are so multi-dimensional that you can study it in a natal chart all the way down to people physically drawing in the energies of those planets through various rituals and occult practices. These are my beliefs. However, again, everything here is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. So let's dive into what I am finding to be the through line of 2024 and the hidden occult messages. Now, I know you might be wondering, why am I starting with King Kong? And as soon as I pressed play, I feel so much emotion. I feel like the ancestors are with me. I did not plan to start with King Kong, but wow, the ancestors are strong over me right now. And they want me to tell you guys about there are many different wars that are being fought in the occult world. Many, many different ones. And the perspective that my ancestors do want to bring to your attention is the occult practices that are placed on media when it comes to the Black experience and the Black American. Now, I did a little prediction in the last election period. This prediction turned out to be wrong. However, there is a lot of what I was saying about who I thought would become president, and it came from my studies on King Kong. Now, to keep things very, very safe for us here, I just want to not predict this time around, but talk about the power of media and how there are many speculations of the racist history of depicting King Kong, okay? And this is really important in understanding overall picture that I'm drawing for you, okay? So King Kong is a story about a film crew accompanied by a damsel actress and Darrow, who discovers an island inhabited by savage natives. And eventually the men captured a gigantic ape, King Kong, and brings him back to New York City to display him as the eighth wonder of the world. But Kong falls in love with Darrow, so he escapes and takes her with him to the top of the Empire State Building, where he's eventually shot down by warplanes. So the story is duplicated in various depictions of King Kong, but the thing that I want you to focus on is that he was depicted as a savage. And there's a strong racist allegory in the symbology of seeing King Kong as a savage. And some critics actually found this to be symbolically depicting white America's views of black people at the time when this originally came out. They drew connections between the capture of King Kong and the transatlantic slave trade. And with Kong's disastrous escape into New York, this was the perceived disaster of granting African American or black people true freedom within the Americas or the United States. These findings of the depiction of gorillas and apes in media made me constantly feel suspicious of any sort of depiction of apes and gorillas in America. You see, the media has a way of portraying what it needs to in order to direct the point of view of the audience that is watching. And in depicting the savages being freed in America, maintained a level of racist beliefs and also of fear. And I can't say that people wanted to evoke fear. I can't accuse them of that without knowing for sure. But I definitely feel that these symbols wanted to maintain that there is a difference and that one is uncivilized and some aren't. This can depict fear, especially in the most extremist of ideas. And this is mainly because people might be like, well, how is it that the media could create such fears? Well, they do this through the subconscious, because you're not going to directly see like the connections of an ape to a black person unless you have certain concepts and ideals from certain people that may have displayed that to you. But again, you may not literally feel it, but maybe something in your subconscious might feel it. Something in your subconscious, and when I say you, I'm talking about the people who this message would be directed to, which unfortunately are probably people who tend to be racists or fear diversity, right? That in their subconscious, to see something as a savage and to have fear of it would maintain a difference between that person and how they depict themselves versus the thing that they don't understand.
Black people are notorious for naming their children 25-letter names that they're never going to get even pronounced right, let alone spelled right. Like, why would you do that?
Do you know why they actually do that? The reason for that is because during slavery, their identities were taken away. So they had to have unique names in order to identify their offspring when they were sold from different plantations.
And so this is why and how racism can actually be maintained. It could be maintained through these images. And if fear is fed, whether literally, directly, or subconsciously, then fear's opposite is love, but fear cannot see love. Therefore, fear turns into hate.
That came down generationally, generational trauma.
Okay, well, how about now? Isn't that sort of trauma for that poor kid that's never going to have his name spelled right?
Only to your standards.
Like, what is... If I were that child, I wouldn't want my name misspelled all the way through or mispronounced by people.
That's because people can't take the time to pronounce it correctly.
Whatever.
You can say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but you can't say Jaquan. Are you kidding me?
Okay, whatever the result is, the poor child does not have his name pronounced correctly or spelled correctly?
Because people do not take the time. You can
Okay,
take the extra 2 seconds to do it, but instead you're sitting here making fun of a whole culture of people for things that they didn't have a choice on.
Do you have a name that gets misspelled a lot?
I sure don't.
Well,
Because my mom whitewashed my name. So that's racist.
So here's the thing, remember that I said that this isn't one-sided. So the occult world, I'm not going to point fingers at anything specifically, but the occult world operates in turning things upside down. That's what we have to understand when we study the Black Boule and any or other secret societies or groups of people that work in underhanded and very private ways. And it won't serve you, in my opinion, to see them as good or bad, but to try to understand why in their beliefs that they would try to flip things around. This is what happens in the occult world. The occult world has a lot to do with flipping things upside down. Flipping things upside down gives power to people who did not have the power beforehand. Consider the triangle or the pyramid, or the system of hierarchies, which a triangle and pyramid can represent symbolically, and how it needs to be flipped upside down. And when you flip it upside down, you're seeing that those who were on top, which appear to be the very, small but privileged group, now are at the bottom. And so in this process of flipping things, you can basically make new meanings or empower the non-empowered, the disempowered. Now, the thing about flipping the coin, flipping things around, is that, especially when we're looking at racism, you can always accuse the main enemy of being the quote-unquote bad guy. But remember what I said about the media evoking fear and rage. Now, this is something that will probably offend a lot of Black people, in my opinion, because a lot of Black people will say that you can't be racist. I'm not actually trying to say that, argue that point, but you can be just like the person that you hate. And quite often, when you are forced, your hand is forced because you feel like the hatred towards you, which would be Black people, the Black experience, is not going away. You think that you've come so far, and we're in 2024 now, and that a lot of these things should be overcome. But we see still in pockets of the world that they're not. Well, the hatred flips, right? So just as much as you have this hatred, this fear towards savages, right? But if we flip it around, two things could possibly occur. The thing that is being depicted as a savage, which truly isn't, can now become a savage. How? Because it's been locked up in a cage, and because it has all of this rage from someone having their foot on their neck. It could have all this rage from having this foot on its neck that it becomes the savage that they called you to be, right? And so that's what's possible, in the sense that you can, whatever you fight, you kind of can become a little bit of that. And I think that this is depicted in the North Node in Aries being a major transit of 2024, in that it is the god of war. It is about looking at our oppositions and what we're fighting. And to be pure of heart and have a sharp sword is to merely cut out the things that no longer serve us, and to be aware of the enemy. The Bible says to keep the enemy close. I believe that it says that. So a lot of these concepts of fighting your enemy, of what you become because you've been held down for so long, is that up to you? Or have they literally created you to be a savage because, one, they called you one, and because, two, they treated you like one? So this is how things get flipped. What you would say you were not, could possibly become or be seen in that way. When we say let love heal us all, it's truly the antidote to the war within ourselves, the war outside of ourselves. Love is the opposite point of fear. Where fear and rage stand, love basically makes it almost obsolete, which is some of the hardest things to do when you've had all of this perspective of yourself being not good enough, not white enough, just always having someone's foot on your neck. It can be very hard to choose love, but if you do, then you're actually stronger than everything that has come against you. Just like how the media is used to portray subconscious images and messages, the occult world is also very much so a mythology. It works together in telling stories. Now, on the surface level, you see these through like tabloids and gossip. And so these are things that are used to propel stories forward, because when it comes to the human race, the species of humans, one of the things that keeps us connected to history, to our past, is the art of storytelling. We see this in astrology, through mythology, Greek mythology, also ancient astrology through Egyptian stories. And we understand spiritual concepts through storytelling. And so this is why in telling stories and creating characters and caricatures and archetypes within media, the industry, this allows for things to speak to our subconscious mind. It allows us to remember landmark moments. It allows us to be able to pass on these stories as well. And that's also really important in understanding the abstract nature of what I'm showing you when it comes to these hidden messages. So in every story, you need to have a protagonist and an antagonist. And even the most ancient stories that's passed down, like the devil versus God, we need to constantly have a version of light versus dark, good versus bad. This allows for stories to glue together and to make sense. So in an abstract way, we can see this, and also in literal ways, we can see this. This is what I understand specifically when we look at the music industry. The music industry uses stories as well, scandals as well. Now, are these people just acting out an archetype and caricature, or are they really living out those archetypes and caricatures? That is up for you to determine and discern. One thing I can say about the industry is that it uses sex as a powerful glue to telling these stories and to keeping things deep in your mind and creating attachments to people and idols. This energy of the intelligence of the physical body. The industry needs the core energy to be about the root chakra. It is here where people will attach themselves to things because this is the first chakra, and it's connected to our sense of safety, our sense of like security, of how powerful we feel in our bodies. And so this is what also I think really needs to be understood about the spiritual world, because even when I looked at the occult at an early age, I was still looking at it through the lens of this is all bad, or this part is good, but this is really bad. But when I take a step back from that, it's really about just seeing it for its magic. And then people use these tools for good and bad. And so this is why the occult world actually trolls the spirit world. And these is why we get spiritual wars, because the spirit world will separate itself to kind of remain good, right? But this also makes you less physically intelligent. The industry is playing off of people's physical ignorance or lack of self. This is why the industry is also probably the most captivating to incels, people who are incelibate, people who desire to, experience the pleasures, the dopamine. This is where we get into the concepts of Venus. They desire these things, and the industry is speaking to a lot. It's speaking to its oppositions and its prey, and allowing us to be seduced by their physical intelligence. And this is why in the darkest of groups, you're going to find sex rituals. So does this mean that sex rituals are bad? No, because in using them with the right people or the person that you trust, or just with yourself, it's a ritual just as its own. But when we look at what is happening in the industry, there's a need to feed certain energies that will help elevate the industry. And this is, it's almost like the more people that you have, the more that you can be powerful, be capable of that true seduction, these attachments, and even idolizations. So sex rituals are huge in the industry. They can be used to literally create a core foundation, a core belief within the industry that there are certain standards of beauty, there's certain standards of what is attractive, and you can't really be, by universal laws, honestly, you can't really stand for something without actually being in it. So you can't really be a sex goddess without being connected to your own sexual escapades. You can't be powerful and great with your physique, with your attraction, without truly understanding or in being in practice of some sort of what it is to connect, to physically seduce, and to be in practice of this. And some people have to be manipulated or coerced in order to participate because of whatever reasons.
We used to go when we go to the club, we used to have these bottles, right? And on this bottle, they be regular Moet bottles. On them bottles right there, they been have something to make the girls be real slippery and all of this kind of stuff. So when you get up, they be like, don't touch them bottles right there and only drink them bottles right there. So we already knew what the drill was. You just don't mess with them bottles, right? Then all of the girls is in the club after a while, they all opening up their mouth like little birds. Just run around just popping pills in their mouth, pop pill. And then that was the party. But all of the females that was in it, that's what they wanted. That was what party, it was part of the hip hop culture. We ain't see nothing wrong with it until Bill Cosby got in trouble.
But they also play a role in hazing and in things that keep the whole structure of the occult world and the secret rituals, how they stay together, right? Because you can have you can have holes punctured in and people who want to get out. So how they stay together is through the dark spells. Blackmail is a dark spell. It's a dark ritual spell. Now, specifically blackmail, this is something that plays a major role because there, as you can see, there's two things going on. There's the need to represent, like you can't be it without exercising it. So you can't be sexy without exercising sexy. This is why this is a part of the rituals. But for those who feel like it's too far or they're pulling away, they don't want to be a part of it, through the art of blackmail and these types of dark spells, you can't get out. You can't get out. I mean, you can get out, but you may feel like you can't. And that too is like a brainwashing. It's like a psychology trauma to you, the blackmail. You can control people, brainwash people. You can get into their minds without actually having to physically do anything. There's all kinds of speculations that people are physically doing things, but my point is that you don't necessarily have to. It's through things like blackmail and dark magic that you can literally get into people's minds, just like how sex gets into people's minds by looking on a screen, by watching a video. All of this dark energy is not bad. It's just what it is. It's darkness because it does not need light to function. It doesn't need physical contact to function. It just needs a planted idea, a seed, or a deep yearning attachment, a need to attach, a reason to have to attach. That's what is the abstract interpretation of dark magic.